Hello, everybody. Welcome to the tier list for the Total War game series. The only game going to be left out on this list because I don't own it and haven't played it and is a very new release as of this recording date is Total War Warhammer 3. More on that probably in the future. We'll see if I get it based off of the gameplay and reviews I see and what changes and what they add and everything. But as of now, it's not going to be on the list. But we have basically everything else you could want, and we're gonna rank them in S or D or anything in between category. Again, this is my personal list and personal opinion on the rankings of games in the Total War series. And yeah, I know I haven't done a Total War game series or anything video or mentioned it really, but I really enjoy the series. I've been playing for a long time now, put a lot of hours into a lot of different games. Very good series as far as strategy goes. You know, you're gonna be hard pressed to find a better game other than maybe like Civ. And yeah, very good series. Yeah, we're gonna be ranking this in my personal opinion based off the amount of enjoyment I've had for the game and how good I think the game is. So basically, what goes into that decision is whether I think the game holds up today, and I can still play it. Whether it looks good, whether mechanically speaking, it runs well and it plays well, and most importantly for me, if I find the setting and time period I'm put into and play in interesting and enjoyable. So yeah, those are the main aspects of what I'm going into, and I'll try not to spend too much time on each individual game in my decision, but just give you a very general and brief overview of why of the game and why I think it is in wherever it is. Medieval 2 Total War, I think, is in the S category. For me, very interesting and good time period and setting. I really love the medieval time period in real life and in video games. Functionally, it still holds up pretty well today. I still play it to this day. It looks fine. There's a lot of good gameplay mechanics and features in there that aren't even in some games anymore for some reason. But yeah, plays well, and yeah, very solid game there. Very good time period, good battles, good units, factions, around the board. Overall, just probably one of the best games in the series, if not the best game. Um, Definitely top two or top three for me. And yeah, very good. Holds up again. Holds up very well, even to this day for being an older game. Napoleon, we're gonna put at C category. Personally, not a huge fan of Napoleon. Not as much with the time period as I do find it somewhat interesting and cool. It's more for me that it's too small of a scope, honestly. It's kind of too focused on this one niche aspect of history. And while I think it's fairly interesting, I think it's less of its own full fledged Total War game and more of like a niche break off game or almost like a big expansion or DLC for Empire. And on you know, take every other game out of the equation on its own. Solid game, looks fine, runs well, plays well today. In a fairly interesting time period, it's just kind of too small of a scope and niche for me to really enjoy it over a lot of other Total War games. Total War Attila, I think, is also going to be in the C category. Almost kind of the same issue, just not as much with, maybe I put it a little above, but not as much with Napoleon. I find the person himself, who the game's named after, and the time period and setting fairly interesting. But it felt almost, again, a little too small scoped, although not as bad as Napoleon, in my opinion. Uh, Fairly good game. Obviously, as being a newer game, looks good, runs well, and plays well today. I think it's, again, fairly interesting setting, but it seems almost kind of like a niche, or not even. It seems kind of like a break off from the Total War Rome series that could have been a big expansion or DLC from like Rome 2. And yeah, I don't know. On its own, again, very solid game, pretty interesting and fun game. It's just in comparison to a lot of other Total War games, I'd rather play them over Attila. I just got Empire here. I'm gonna put this in the A category. I know this one's fairly highly contested, as people don't really enjoy the muskets and gunpowder era combat and how the Total War handled it in this game. But personally, I don't see that much of an issue with it. I think the battles play well and have a pretty unique and interesting flair to them, being in the Gunpowder Age. I think it was pretty cool being able to do naval combat in the way that this game implemented it. I think it looks and runs and plays well even to this day, and I even play it to this day. And in my opinion, a very interesting and good setting and campaign, which is most important for me. And I think it's really cool that you actually get to play and interact with America in this game, which is pretty far, or not even in between, just very rare at all in a lot of historical games and Total War games, obviously, as well. So yeah, very fun, solid game. I put a lot of hours into this. This is probably one of my more favorite Total Wars, probably even in my top 5. And yeah, really like it. Very interesting time period, plays and run wells today. Not as big of a stickler on the musket and gunpowder era ground combat as a lot of other people are, and I think, yeah, very ambitious and interesting and unique game as well. So yeah, solid game. But yeah, no, a lot of people aren't as high on it as me though. So again, my opinion. We got Medieval Total War. No, not two, just one here. Maybe I'd say it's top of the D category. Again, I think the time period is very interesting, and I like the medieval time period and the setting a lot, and that's probably the game's redeeming feature. But as far as playability today and enjoyment I get it from today, just not there. Very old game that definitely shows its age, and just not a game that you would enjoy playing as of 2022 and I guess beyond, or even for the past years. Yeah, just not. It's not, I guess, a flaw that anything of the game itself. I'm not saying it was complete garbage overall. I'm just saying, as of now, if I were to boot it up and play it, I wouldn't find that much enjoyment from it, from the fact that it definitely shows its age in a pretty major way, especially compared to a lot of other games on this list. Total War Rome, I'm going to put this in S tier, probably at the top. This is probably my favorite game of the entire series. I still play it today and was literally playing it earlier today before I made this video. What can I say about this? I mean, I mean, first of all, yes, it is my first game I ever played in the Rome, or in the Total War series. So yeah, maybe a little biased there. But it's just, I love everything about this. I love the setting and time period. I know it's, historically speaking, not that accurate compared to like what actually was going on, but I'll allow it because it's awesome. I just love the setting and the time period. I think the game, especially with the remaster, but even if you don't have the remastered version, the game still holds up very well to this day. I play it to this day. Very interesting factions, good campaign and scope. I like all the battles and the units and the factions. Plays very well, runs very well. Even to this day, again, looks fine, especially if you have the remastered version, but even if you don't, still looks very good. I don't play the remastered version, I still think it's fine. And yeah, also with Medieval 2 and Rome, very good modability. And that was kind of the first games where that really came into play. So yeah, credit for that as well. Even though I rarely mod either of the games, just because I kind of like the vanilla version of the games. Next we got Shogun, which I think is down here in the D category of Total War, or Medieval Total War. Just kind of the same issues as Medieval Total War. It's just very old game that has not aged well at all. As far as overall of all time, it's a fine game. I still don't think it would be one of the better games in the series, even taking that into consideration, but yeah, just very, very old game that shows its age in a very bad way. On top of that, I think Shogun Total War, why it's lower in the D category than medieval, is because I am not a fan of the Shogun time period at all. I do not find it very interesting whatsoever, and that just kind of adds, fuel to the fire for why this game is down in D for me. So next is Rome 2, which I'm going to put at the top of the B category, just because it's a fine game. It definitely holds up well today. Looks fine, plays and runs fine, and I even think the time period is really interesting. I enjoy the time period. I just think, for one, it's Rome 2, and I don't think it really. While there's definite changes from Rome Total War to Rome 2, I don't think they're all better than, or welcome changes that I think are better than Rome or improved upon the whole series. And on top of that, I don't think that many people, and myself included, really appreciated the microtransactions being pushed down my throat in this game, which, is another knock on it. But other than that, yeah, very solid game, but compared to some of the heavier hitters on this list, is not, up to scuff with them. Total War Warhammer 1, I think, is an A category game fairly safely. I know, obviously, nowadays, even if you don't have Warhammer 3, it doesn't get a lot of playtime or looks beyond Mortal Empires, really. But, take the game for, and there are still people who play it, but even if you don't play it, remember when this game was the only Warhammer game on the franchise. I still think it looks very good and plays very well and runs very well. Very interesting mechanics and campaign. A lot of new interesting stuff with the Warhammer franchise that came in. Like magic and new factions and a new world to experience. I love the setting and, of the Warhammer fantasy. It's incredibly interesting to me and I really enjoy it. Beyond that, again, looks good, runs well, very interesting and good mechanics in the campaign and battles that come along with the Warhammer franchise, and this goes for the Warhammer franchise as a whole. Very interesting and unique and cool factions and units, and it just makes for amazing campaigns and battles that look awesome and feel and sound awesome. It's just very good game series and very good game on its own. And the DLC, yeah, I know there's a lot of, for the newer games, there's a lot of DLC little packs you can buy, but some of them are good, so I don't know. I'm not going to go into as much depth with that just because it's kind of a norm now with these newer games. I'm going to lump these both in just because I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time on the Shogun series, which I am not a fan of personally. Do the games look fine and run well and play well? Yeah. Even to this day, you can still play them if you like. For me, though, the big knocks for me personally against the game is the setting and the time period and the, units and everything. I just don't find the whole Shogun era setting very interesting or enjoyable. This is more of a personal thing, honestly, and it's why I didn't put them in the D category. But I just don't care for the Shogun category, time period and everything as a whole. Again, nothing against the games and how they play and how they look. Just don't like the setting or time periods or the units or anything because of all that. And that's why I think it's pretty low on the list for me personally. Three Kingdoms, I think, has the same breakdown I had of the Shogun series. Plays very well, pretty intricate campaign and battles, which a lot of people liked, including me. Obviously looks very good, being a newer game in the series. And on top of that, plays well and is, kind of unique-ish setting. But again, this is a setting that I personally am not a huge fan of. I like it a little more than the Shogun setting, which is why it's higher on the list, as well as the fact that it plays better and everything is a little more intricate. but and it's some new and unique features here. And I think this is the Lords. Like this is the first time they had Lords or something. Maybe I can't remember chronologically. And yeah, that's why I think it's higher on the list. But what's keeping it from being higher on the B or in the A or S category is I just don't care for the Three Kingdoms setting as much as a lot of other settings in the game. Personally, I think Napoleon and Attila honestly are even more interesting, but I think the game is as a whole is better than those games. So it's kind of like balancing it out how much that impacts it, and that's why it's in B. Britannia, I think, is the only other game going into the D category for me. The game, being one of the newer ones, it looks fine today, and you can definitely still play it today, and the playability is not that bad today. It's just, it has its own host of, mechanical and AI issues, and even without that, just kind of a very niche little game here. Very small scope of a game, obviously focusing on mainly Britain uh, as the game suggests from its title. That's the main focus of the game. Very small scope, somewhat interesting setting and time period, but given the fact that it's so niche and focused, you don't really get to enjoy it as much as you would have if the game was on a bigger scale, in my opinion. I think, yeah, there's also some mechanical problems that the game had and struggled with that weren't awesome to play through, and yeah, I just very subpar niche game that almost felt like a DLC, add-on game. So yeah, not impressed with it at all. That's why it's in the D category. Troy, I'm gonna put in the B category. Maybe, yeah, I'm gonna put it in the middle of the B category. I think, obviously, being a very new game to the series, or newer than basically every other game, but Warhammer 2 and 3. Or no, just Warhammer 3. Looks and plays and runs very well, obviously, to this day. And very interesting. I like the time period of the whole Troy and, ancient Greece. I find that pretty interesting. Very ambitious game with implementing a decent amount of new looks and features and, techniques and stuff, which I give it credit for. Some of which are fairly interesting. Good time period again. It's just the reason it's not higher on the list for me personally is because it's a little too small scope. It's not that bad, nothing compared to Britannia or some of the other games. Like it's definitely, you can tell it's its own. You can tell it's kind of its own thing, and it's also a very unique game in comparison to a lot of other stories, as ancient Greece and Troy and everything. Obviously that hasn't really been touched on. And yeah, it's an ambitious and unique game, which I give it a lot of credit for. But some of that uniqueness and ambitiousness and the change they made for the game, some of it, not all of it, but some of it isn't amazing, which I think keeps it from being higher on the list. And it's a little small scoped for my likings. But apart from that, yeah, runs very well, looks very good, very cool setting and, time period and story you're telling here. And very interesting in that regard, in the units and everything, the combat, but I don't know. I don't think it's one of the more remarkable or amazing games in the series. Warhammer 2. I'm considering put this at the top of the A or the bottom of the S. I think you can make an argument for it being either. I'm going to put it at the bottom of the S category. I think this game was just amazing. Warhammer 2 it's just an amazing game, and I hope Warhammer 3 ends up living up to it at least, if not surpassing it. We'll see as the coming weeks come and, everything, pans out, and see how good the game truly is from reviews and gameplay, from more people with more experience and time in the game. But Warhammer 2 is just truly amazing. Where do I start? It's just, obviously it runs and plays and looks very good, being one of the newer games in the series. And yeah, in that regards, it's amazing. The setting and I was almost a time period, but I guess it's still a specific time period of the Warhammer Fantasy. But the setting and scene as a whole of the Warhammer, and of the Warhammer Fantasy is just truly amazing. I think it's very immersive. I think it's incredibly interesting, even without being historical, which is why I know a lot of people play these games. But even without that, I think the setting is amazing. I really like the Warhammer franchise. I like the addition of the factions and the part of the worlds that this really unlocked with the elves, and I want to say no, I don't. I want to say the Lizardmen, but I can't remember if that was exclusive to Warhammer 2. But yeah, introduced a wide variety of very interesting and unique factions and units and everything, and story, the Vortex and everything. Very good standalone campaign on itself with the Great Vortex and finding all those shards and chaos. I mean, I really liked the additions this game made and the story and everything that added on to the Warhammer series from Total War Warhammer. And on top of that, I think the Mortal Empires campaign is arguably, in my opinion, one of the best campaigns we've ever been given. Taking the Warhammer 1 and 2 campaigns and kind of just putting them together in this massive, huge scope, awesome, like, huge scale Warhammer campaign with a massive campaign map, so many unique and diverse factions and units and parts of the world, so many options of people to play, and different things to play and buy, I guess, a DLC. Yeah, it's just truly amazing game and game series as a whole with the Warhammer franchise. And yeah, I love those games. That's why I think it's in the S tier for me. And yeah, that is that's my ranking of the Total War games here from S to D category. I know this is my personal opinion, so your list may vary as to what you think is your mid tier. What are your favorite games? What are your least favorite games? Definitely, if you want to, let me know in the comments or something. And hope you guys enjoyed the video and the ranking. And like and subscribe. See you guys in the next video.